At first, it looked like nothing, just another quiet sweep, another routine check, another carefully controlled moment inside the polished illusion of royal perfection. But what unfolded in those next few minutes wasn't routine. It was the kind of moment the palace fears most, the kind that cracks open secrets buried so deep, even history itself had been rewritten to forget them. Because behind that wardrobe was something that should not exist, something officially declared gone forever, something the world had already mourned as ashes. And yet, there it was, hidden, protected, waiting. And the most chilling part? Someone inside the royal circle knew. It began in silence. Early 2026. West London, a private residence tied quietly to Queen Camilla, far from cameras, far from headlines, far from scrutiny, the kind of place where secrets can breathe without being questioned, where doors remain closed not because they're locked, but because no one dares to open them. Until that morning, no sirens, no chaos, just protocol, boots on gravel, radios whispering, eyes scanning. But something felt off, too controlled, too precise, as if the house itself knew something was about to be exposed. Room by room, nothing, everything clean, everything perfect, too perfect, until they reached the upper level, that wall, that one wall, smooth, polished, untouched, different. And that's when instinct kicked in, the kind that doesn't follow rules, the kind that breaks them, scratch marks, fresh, deliberate. Someone had tried to open it recently, and suddenly the air shifted, because this was no longer routine. Check it, that command didn't just echo through the hallway, it shattered the illusion. And then, stop. That voice, sharp, urgent, desperate. At the far end stood the grandson, the quiet one, the invisible one, the one who stayed out of headlines, out of interviews, out of everything, but not out of this. His face told the truth before his words even tried to hide it. Fear, raw, unfiltered, impossible to fake. You can't open that, not hesitation, not discomfort, control. He wasn't asking, he was trying to stop something from being seen. And that's when everything changed. Because in the royal world, resistance is louder than confession. The officer didn't argue, didn't react, didn't hesitate, just one silent signal, 2 steps forward, and just like that, the protection fell apart. He resisted. Of course he did, but not for long, because the moment had already escaped his control. And then, the sound. A crack. Sharp. Final. The lock didn't just break. It gave up. And when those doors opened, silence. Not the calm kind, the kind that freezes people. Because what those flashlights revealed wasn't supposed to exist. Boxes. Rows of them. Not random. Not messy. Placed with care, precision, intent. And inside, light. Explosive. Blinding. Unmistakable. Diamonds. Rubies. Sapphires. Each one screaming history. Each one whispering something darker. Because these weren't just jewels. They were records. Documented. Cataloged. Declared destroyed, gone in the fire that once erased part of the royal legacy, gone forever. Except they weren't. They were here, hidden, perfect, untouched. And suddenly, that fire from 2022 didn't feel like a tragedy anymore. It felt like a cover. Because how does something burn and then reappear without a mark? How does history vanish and then quietly wait behind a wardrobe? The officer knew instantly. This wasn't recovery. This was revelation. And behind him, the grandson said nothing. Because what do you say when the truth is staring back at you, brighter than diamonds? His silence said everything. And that silence traveled fast. Faster than protocol. Faster than secrecy. Straight to one man, King Charles III. The call didn't hesitate. Inform His Majesty immediately. Because this wasn't internal anymore. This was explosive. And when that phone rang inside Buckingham Palace, everything changed again. He listened. Didn't interrupt, didn't react, but his grip tightened because the words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. Jewels destroyed, now found, hidden, inside a private residence, connected to, no, not possible, except it was. And when the name came through, Camilla's grandson, that's when the crack appeared. Not in a wall, not in a cabinet, in the monarchy itself. Because this wasn't an outsider. This wasn't theft from beyond the gates. This was inside. Too close, uncomfortably close. And suddenly, that old story of the fire started to feel different. Convenient. Too convenient. Cameras failing, systems down, records lost. And now, evidence resurfacing. Untouched. Which means one thing. They were never in that fire. They were removed. Before it even began. Planned. calculated, executed, and protected. But by who? Because you don't move royal history without access. You don't hide it for years without protection. And you don't keep it untouched without confidence. Confidence that no one would ever look. Confidence that even if they did, they wouldn't question it. Because in a place built on loyalty, loyalty can become the perfect disguise. And now that disguise was slipping. Because inside that meeting room, as files opened and names surfaced, one terrifying possibility began to form. What if this wasn't just about missing jewels? What if this was about something bigger? Something buried long before that fire? Something protected not by accident, but by design? And if that's true, then this wardrobe wasn't the beginning. It was just the first crack. Because when secrets survive fire, they're not accidents. They're intentions. And the real question isn't who hid them. It's who knew they were there all along? And just like that, the palace wasn't quiet anymore. Not on the outside. That illusion remained intact, guards in position, schedules unchanged, the world still believing everything was under control. But inside, something had shifted, something dangerous. Because once a secret like this surfaces, it doesn't stay contained. It spreads. It infects every corner of trust, every layer of loyalty, every carefully constructed image that the monarchy depends on to survive. And now, all eyes, the real eyes, the ones behind closed doors, turn toward one person, Queen Camilla. Not publicly, not officially, but quietly, intensely, suspiciously. Because the question wasn't just how those jewels ended up there. The real question was, how did they stay hidden for so long, without protection? And the answer to that question was far more uncomfortable than anyone wanted to admit. Because protection inside royal walls doesn't come from locks. It comes from people, from influence, from silence, from the unspoken rule that some doors are simply never opened. And Camilla's grandson, he wasn't just lucky, he was shielded. For years, whispers had circled quietly through palace corridors, subtle, cautious, never loud enough to be dangerous. Stories of how he moved differently, how certain rules didn't quite apply, how areas connected to him were rarely questioned, rarely inspected, rarely disturbed. At the time, it looked like affection, a grandmother protecting her grandson. Harmless, human. But now it looked like something else. Because affection, when placed inside a system built on hierarchy and obedience, becomes power. And power, when left unchecked, creates blind spots, huge ones, the kind you can hide history inside. Investigators began piecing it together slowly, like reconstructing a crime that never officially happened. The cabinet wasn't random. It wasn't temporary. It was placed deliberately in a location tied to his private space, a zone wrapped in invisible immunity. No staff entered without hesitation. No officer pushed without clearance. No one questioned what didn't belong to them. Because in the monarchy, you don't question family. And that was the mistake. Because while everyone was respecting boundaries, someone was using them, building a vault behind a wardrobe, preserving treasures that the world believed had turned to ash. And here's where it gets darker, because this wasn't just about hiding. It was about understanding the system well enough to manipulate it. Whoever orchestrated this, whether it was him alone or not, knew exactly how palace psychology worked, knew where people would hesitate, knew what wouldn't be checked, knew that loyalty could be turned into a shield stronger than any lock. And that realization, that's what shook King Charles III the most. Because theft can be explained, accidents can be forgiven, but manipulation of trust, that's something far more dangerous. Because it means the system isn't broken, it's being used. And if it happened once, who's to say it hasn't happened before? That's when the investigation took a turn no one expected. It stopped looking at the present and started digging into the past. Old records, old incidents, old mistakes, jewels misplaced during relocations, artifacts quietly disappearing and reappearing years later, pieces that were miscounted, misfiled, misunderstood. At the time, they were dismissed as human error. But now they looked like patterns, small cracks that had been ignored. Because no one wanted to believe they connected to something bigger. Because believing that would mean accepting a terrifying truth, that royal history itself may have been quietly rewritten over time. And suddenly, this wasn't just about Camilla's grandson. This was about precedent. Because history has seen this before. Courts filled with whispers, families divided by loyalty and ambition, secrets passed down not through documents, but through silence. Back in the era of King Henry VIII, betrayal didn't always look like rebellion. Sometimes it looked like protection. Sometimes it wore the face of family, relatives hiding documents, allies guarding valuables, insiders controlling controlling what the crown could see and what it couldn't. And now, centuries later, the pattern felt familiar, uncomfortably familiar, because when power and loyalty collide, the truth doesn't disappear. It just gets relocated, hidden, preserved, waiting. And that brings us to the most unsettling part of this entire story. Because what if these jewels were never meant to be sold? What if they were never meant to leave? What if they were being kept, protected not for profit, but for control? Because in royal history, possession isn't just about wealth. It's about leverage, influence, power. And if someone holds pieces of the crown's past, they hold something far more valuable than gold. They hold narrative, the ability to reveal or conceal, to expose or protect. And that possibility, that's what turned this from a scandal into a potential crisis. Because if one hidden collection existed, who's to say there aren't more? Hidden in other residences, protected by other loyalties, buried behind other private spaces no one dares to inspect. And beyond the palace walls, there's another layer, a darker one. Because not all missing royal treasures stay inside the family. Some vanish into something far more dangerous. A network, silent, global, untouchable, where history is bought and sold like currency, where a single jewel tied to a queen can travel from London to Dubai to Zurich to a private vault no one can trace. Collectors who don't ask questions, dealers who don't leave records, transactions that exist only in whispers. And once something enters that world, it rarely comes back. Which raises a chilling possibility. Were these jewels saved from that fate, or were they waiting to enter it because timing matters? And the fact that they stayed hidden for years suggests patience, planning, control, not panic, not desperation. And that means someone was thinking long-term, which leads to the question no one in that palace wants to say out loud. Was this an isolated act, or part of something ongoing? Because systems like this don't build themselves overnight. They grow quietly, carefully, through trust, through access, through the very structure designed to protect the crown. And now, that structure is under pressure. Because once trust is questioned at the highest level, everything else begins to shake. Relationships, protocols, silences, even loyalty itself. And somewhere in the middle of all this stands Camilla, a grandmother, a protector, a symbol of family inside the monarchy, but now also a possible link, not proven, not declared, but impossible to ignore. Because sometimes the most dangerous role in any system is the one that protects without questioning. And now the palace faces a decision, not public, not visible, but critical. Do they expose everything, risking the image, the stability, the illusion, or do they contain it, control it, let it fade into silence like so many things before it? Because history shows one thing very clearly. The monarchy doesn't fall because of secrets. It falls because of the moment those secrets become impossible to hide. And right now, that moment feels closer than ever. Because the wardrobe is open, the jewels are seen, the story is out. But the truth, the real truth, who planned it? Who knew? Who protected it? And what else is still hidden? That part is still in the shadows. And if there's one thing history has taught us, it's that shadows inside royal walls don't stay quiet forever.